Concerns have been raised regarding the presence of giant wild boars after an unusual wildlife encounter in Black Hollow Forest. Following reports of sightings of an exceptionally large wild boar, Black Hollow Forest, which has been shunned by the local populations for a considerable amount of time after sundown, has become the topic of renewed anxiety. The beast is said to weigh close to 1,000 pounds, and there have been reports that it is connected to the disappearance of livestock, wild deer, and even 2 hikers who went missing in the spring of the previous year for reasons that have not been explained. According to the reports of the locals, the monster is claimed to reside in the deeper parts of the forest, which is a region that is distinguished by dense foliage and conditions that are abnormally silent after nightfall. There is a tangible silence in the area, and residents have reported that both birds and insects have stopped their singing. This is a phenomenon that is not commonly seen in regular forest situations. A heat signature that was substantially greater than that of any known deer or ordinary wild boar species was discovered in a recent examination that was carried out by wildlife enthusiasts utilizing some of the most advanced equipment available, including thermal drones. Taking the temperature measurement just after midnight revealed a figure that was roughly equivalent in size to that of a cow. It was observed that there was a clearing when the source was approached more closely. The skeletal remains of a number of different animals were discovered within the clearing. Among these were skulls and bones from cattle and deer, as well as the fresh remains of a huge black bear, which stood out among the other items. There were indications of trauma on the bear's body, which were compatible with power hits from the tusk. There was a pierced cranium and a collapsed rib cage, both of which are noteworthy details that show a significant amount of force was employed. It was said that a giant wild boar came from the woodland not long after this find was made. An extraordinary amount of scarring was observed on the animal, which was characterized as being coated in coarse black fur and being extremely large. There was asymmetry in its tusks, with one being long and curled and the other being broken. A number of people observed that the boar's body had open wounds, but these wounds did not appear to be preventing the animal from moving around. According to reports, the animal did not show any signs of reluctance and moved forward at a significant pace. The animal was largely unharmed by the defensive tactics that were taken, which included having numerous rifle bullets fired at it. One of the observers sustained serious injuries as a result of the impact of its charge, while another of them was rendered unable to perform their duties. Surprisingly, the boar did not maintain its assault on the target the entire time. The creature then retreated into the woods and vanished into the darkness after stopping for a moment. As a consequence of this, a number of minor heat signatures were found in the region. A quiet breathing sound and the gentle scratching of hooves were also heard in the background during these passages. Dozens of eyes were observed blazing in the darkness, which raised the possibility that there were additional wild boars around, potentially in a pack. An indication of territorial patterns and the possibility of collective hunting or defensive movement is provided by the behavior that was seen. These new questions have been raised as a result of this incident regarding the prevalence of enormous wild boars in remote forest locations and the potential influence that these boars could have on the safety of both livestock and humans. There is evidence that points to the existence of a particularly large and violent wild boar, which may be a part of a larger population. However, there are still certain factors that have to be speculated upon. To protect the safety of the general public and to gain a better understanding of this unusual behavior that occurs within wild boar populations, additional research and the monitoring of wildlife by trained professionals may be required. Those who find themselves in the vicinity of or within Black Hollow Forest during the hours of twilight and nightfall should exercise extreme caution. There was a battle that took place deep within the forest in the early hours of dawn, and it has the potential to transform our knowledge of the behavior of wild boars. Observers noticed the abrupt appearance of a group of wild boars that were less in size but still possessed a terrible presence. This occurred after an encounter with a large specimen was reported earlier in the night. In spite of the fact that these animals exhibited multiple indicators of previous harm, such as matted fur, obvious scarring, and exposed wounds, they walked with a deliberate purpose and coordinated movement. In spite of the fact that they appeared to be in a weaker state, they showed a constant life and tenacity. Even though swarms of insects were surrounding their heads, the boars did not move and appeared to be unaffected by the agony they were experiencing. Their tusks were obviously worn, discolored, and sharpened as a result of years of use, which suggested that they had lived a life of continuously confronting and surviving. The individuals who were hurt were located in the middle of the clearing, and the gang started to encircle them. One of the observers made an effort to collect a firearm, but they were unable because they had incurred leg harm. In the process of reaching for the weapon, one of the boars conducted a proximity test by approaching and receding, as if it were evaluating the level of danger. In the end, the gun was eventually fired, resulting in the death of one of the animals that was moving forward. On the other hand, the remaining boars rapidly resumed their aggressive behavior after a brief period of reluctance. The surviving boars continued to advance, unfazed by the fact that they had suffered casualties among their group, despite the fact that they had been hit by many further rounds that appeared to render another individual incapable of combat. The pack dropped in synchrony as soon as the firearm was emptied of its ammunition. The assault was carried out by a number of individuals working together. One of the participants was dragged away from the scene by force, and they got deep wounds from tusks and hooves resulting from this contact. The injuries that were sustained during this encounter were severe. During the attack, a level of concentration and perseverance that is rarely seen in wild boar populations was displayed. In the early morning hours, there was a return to the absence of noise. At that point, there was only one person who had survived. Blood, pieces of clothing, and shattered pieces of equipment were spread across the ground in the clearing, which bore some signs of the tremendous struggle that had taken place. With the exception of a broken camera, there was no noticeable evidence of the person who had gone missing. A new presence materialized at the edge of the tree line as the lone survivor made an attempt to walk away from the fallen tree. It was the same enormous boar that had been seen previously, and it was identified as the likely alpha. It stood there quietly watching. It did not engage in an assault but rather observed, let out a low grunt, and then retreated into the forest. The remaining members of the gang followed in silence. After a tense and uncertain passage of time, the distant hum of engines and the faint echo of human voices gradually grew louder, signaling the long-awaited arrival of rescue teams. Emergency personnel swiftly descended upon the site, their movements efficient yet cautious, as they navigated through dense undergrowth and uneven terrain. With practiced urgency, they located and safely extracted the sole surviving individual, disoriented, exhausted, but thankfully alive. However, even as this rescue marked the end of the immediate crisis, it did little to dispel the larger and more troubling implications of the incident. Indeed, while the physical retrieval of the victim brought temporary relief, the deeper questions it raised remain unanswered. Chief among them is the evolving understanding of wild boar behavior, especially in regions where these animals have lived with minimal human interference. This episode has sparked widespread concern and scientific curiosity due to the remarkable behaviors displayed during the attack, behaviors that defy traditional categorizations of wild pig conduct. Observers and researchers have noted a number of unexpected and unusually advanced traits. These included what appeared to be coordinated group movements, strategic positioning among herd members, and even resistance to injury levels that would typically incapacitate other wildlife. Perhaps most disturbing was the display of selective aggression, targeting one individual while avoiding unnecessary energy expenditure on others, suggesting cognitive choices rather than instinctive panic. Additionally, behavioral patterns hinted at the presence of a social hierarchy, with dominant members seemingly directing action, while others followed in a synchronized manner. Such characteristics challenge the conventional view of wild boars as merely opportunistic omnivores driven by instinct and hunger. Instead, they point to a more complex behavioral profile, one that possibly involves learned responses, environmental conditioning, and intraspecies communication that has, until now, gone largely undocumented. As such, wildlife biologists and ethologists are now calling for a comprehensive re-examination of wild boar dynamics, particularly in isolated ecosystems where selective pressures may be driving accelerated behavioral evolution. This incident underscores the urgent need for further interdisciplinary research, combining biology, ecology, and even animal psychology to uncover the underlying mechanisms that might explain such anomalous behavior. Are we witnessing the early stages of behavioral adaptation in response to human encroachment? Or are these traits a relic of long-forgotten survival strategies resurfacing under modern pressures? For the moment, the interior of the forest where the encounter took place remains under continuous observation. Surveillance, drones, motion sensors, and remote monitoring equipment have been deployed to track movement patterns and identify potential risks. Wildlife authorities are also advising local residents, hikers, and researchers to exercise extreme caution when entering nearby areas and to report any unusual animal activity immediately. To scientists, these boars represent a compelling mystery, one that could reshape how we understand animal intelligence, adaptation, and resilience in rapidly changing environments. But to public safety officials, they are now a rising concern, capable of presenting threats that may exceed current response capabilities. Ultimately, this incident is not just about a rare encounter with dangerous wildlife. It is a reminder that nature, when left undisturbed for long enough, often adapts in unpredictable and sometimes alarming ways. Whether shaped by generations of environmental stress, isolation, or an increasingly human-altered landscape, these wild boars now stand at the intersection of curiosity and caution, a subject that commands both scientific inquiry and practical vigilance.